In this video, I'm gonna show you how to set up a SQL Server environment on your Mac and working with Visual Studio. The version I'll be using is Visual Studio 2022 at the time of recording being out with a preview version and number 5, the most updated one. It was released on 25th of January this year. Now I gotta tell you that I have already did another tutorial, but I was using JETBRAINS writer, which was also another IDE for ASP.NET core development. But this time, I got you guys. I'll be using Visual Studio, so I'll be going quick on this one. But if you find any of my concepts that I talk about during this tutorial hard to grip, please pay a visit to that previous tutorial. I have 2 resources for you guys. One is the video and the other being a text-based tutorial. A disclaimer here, I made the tutorial with JETBRAINS writer, but it shouldn't be such a problem because I'll be demoing live in this video with Visual Studio. So let's dive right in. Okay, so the first step would be to install, download and install Docker on your Mac. Depending on your environment or architecture, you would download the Intel or Apple chip version. Mine is an M1, so I'll be using this Apple chip version. And I have with me the installer already, so I'm just gonna open it, drag and drop it to my applications folder. Gonna take a few seconds. Step 1 done, I'm logged into my account. Step number 2 would be to jump into Docker preferences. You can either click this cog icon or go with preferences from your menu bar. Then in resources, you would adjust your system resources spent for Docker. For this particular purpose, I find that assigning just one CPU, going with the bare minimum memory, and the least amount of disk for Docker, just for the database image, is fine. So I would go with these as the bare minimum for it. So apply and restart. This is gonna take a while, so I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward. Alright, so for the next step, step number 3, please open your terminal app and browse my text tutorial. That's this line for part 1. So this step will be pulling or downloading a SQL Server Docker image from their repository. So if your Mac is an M1 one, we will run this command. Otherwise, if it's an Intel one, we will choose the second line. So let's do that and run it from terminal. This is gonna take a while, up to a few minutes, depending on your connection. So once again, I'll fast forward through it. Once the download is successful, you will see a hash number. And to double check that, you can go into Docker and see in images, you will see that very thing that we just downloaded in there. Okay, so next step, we will head to number 5. And again, there's 2 separate commands for each architecture. So if yours is an M1, copy the first one, otherwise the second one. There's one thing I want to note you once again is about the password part of the command. If you decided to go on your own or your own password, please remember it should satisfy all of these conditions. Okay, so run it, copy it, run it in terminal, and if it's ran successfully, we will get yet another hash number, and we will see it running in our Docker dashboard right here. Same name with the one that we started just now, which is this one. So that is the last step for Docker. Now we will go ahead and move on to Visual Studio. Alright, so like I said in the beginning of the video, we are gonna use Visual Studio 2022, right now being the preview version, and have with me the installer right now just downloaded. So I'll open it and run it from here. And it's gonna be a long process, so again I would pass forward. Just a second, I'm gonna end terminal, quit. And for this particular purpose of working with just .NET, I'm gonna uncheck the boxes for Android, iOS, or Mac OS. Just keep this part and gonna install. So it's gonna take a few minutes. So again, let's fast forward. Right. So now that we have Visual Studio 2022 installed on our Mac already, I would open a sample project from the textbook. I'm using the Windows version. Just a second. I'm using the Windows version of the code, and that should be working fine. And it is my intention to use that, not the macOS version. Okay, so let's choose this one, movie list. Expand the window size. Alright, so first step in this IDE, and it is the same one with my text tutorial, we would upgrade the target framework of the project to 6.0, and then we would update the NuGet packages to the corresponding SDK as well. So let's do those two. Also a reminder to always keep Docker and the Docker image that we installed in running mode whenever we test the ASP.NET Core app. So in Visual Studio, I would right click on our solution and choose options. Then in this project options windows, I would go to the general tab under build, and I click on .NET 6.0. The other versions are not installed, so that's why I wanted to go with 6.0 on my machine. Click OK. That's the first step. Second step, I would open NuGet package manager in here and choose the third tab, which is updates. So I would want to update all of the current dependencies to their newest available version. So click on update packages and accept the license. Alright, so that's it. Step number 2. Next step, we would open appsettings.json, and we would change this part. There's a very important note that I put in my tutorial, is that you should never push this change of the connection string. So you only replace it in your local machine for testing and developing purpose, but never push this change in appsettings.json to the group GitHub repo or any VCS version control system, because it will break the other members' environment. So only replace it locally in this file and go ahead and develop and test. But before you commit, just restore it back to this previous string. Or here I have the same thing as well. So copy it, maybe save it somewhere for backup purpose, and that's it. So I have it backed up already. I will go ahead and copy this string, this new string in there. And another note is that if you went with your own password previously with Docker, remember before you ran the Docker image of the SQL server, if you went with your own password, remember to replace it in here as well. Okay, so there we go. And this time with Visual Studio, you would need to build the solution. So go ahead and build. And that's it with this step. Then we would jump to step number 4, where we would use the Entity Framework core command line version of the tools to update our database. We update this time because we have some database migration already in the project, so we only need to update our connection, database connection. So to do that, we would click on movie list, right click, and open terminal right from there. So open terminal, type in the command, or you can copy this command and paste it in there. Okay, so everything should be going through just fine. Okay, so all good. And to test it out, you would run the app. So run it under debug mode. I think I will start it from here though. Okay, so let's go ahead and run. There we are. So the app is working fine. I'll add a movie. It's a Wonderful Life. It was released in 1946. I watched it already. Not really a comedy, but it's a drama movie, and I rated 5. It's excellent, and it's added to our database. So that's it with Visual Studio and Docker with a SQL Server image running. So that's pretty much it about the tutorial. There's still one more thing I want to mention though, and this is quite an edge case. So for example, sometimes when you try to build your update your database with these CLI tools, it won't go through. I'm not sure this time it will show any errors, but let's say that there is an error and it cannot build, it cannot update the database. In this example it went through, but let's say it cannot. So in that case, we would, because there is no built-in support for SQL Server from Visual Studio on the Mac, at least right now at the time of recording. In that case, I would suggest you to download this database client, which is called Azure Data Studio from Microsoft. And it have different versions for the different OSs. So I have with me this app installed already, so I will fire it up. So it's a database client, and it allows us to establish a connection to our local host. So let's say right now we still have our Docker running, right? And it's basically a local host. So I would from the main screen of Azure Data Studio, I would add a new connection, and then I would choose Microsoft SQL Server. On the server part, I would go with localhost And for authentication type, I would choose SQL login, username being SA, and password being the one. Either you go with value tag 1 at 123, or you go with your own, which was the same one that you used to establish this Docker image, right? We will remember password in there, and we choose the database being master. Okay, so let's connect. Okay, so wait until it turns green, and we will browse further into the database, the master database. All right, so the issue I mentioned previously, one second, I've got to open terminal once again. So previously, sometimes if this process with database updating go through, it will show you an error, something like table with a name, like for example, table categories already already exists or something. I mean something with that similar meaning. So we would know that right now in our database, localhost database, there are some tables with the same name already existed. So when that happens, you would open Azure Data Studio or any other database client that you are using, and delete the ones that you don't want, especially that database with the table with the same name. So just right click on the table you want to drop and select script as drop. Then you would run that command. It's referenced stuff. So yeah, so to delete this, you already know how to delete it. We would delete the ones without any like foreign keys dependent. So let's say I'm performing it. And finally, square s drop. Okay, so it seems like we are successful, and we will refresh the connection, and all of those 4 tables should be removed already. Yep. And that's it about this extra part of the tutorial. Good luck with the setup, and have a great one. Thank you for watching.